The house was a tomb at that hour. Shadows pressed into the corners of the walls, and the silence was broken only by the faint hum of the ceiling fan above me. It was nearly 2 in the morning, and though my body ached for rest, my mind refused to yield. I lay there, staring at the cracks in the plastered ceiling, measuring each second by the faint ticking of the clock on the dresser. Sleep had become an unreliable companion, vanishing when I needed it most. I shifted against the sheets, turning onto my side, hoping exhaustion would finally win the battle. That was when I heard it, a sound that did not belong. A faint creak from the wooden floorboards beyond my door. My breath stilled. The rhythm of footsteps carried through the hall, hesitant yet deliberate, as though someone were testing each step before committing to it. In a house this quiet, the smallest sound expanded into something enormous. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Perhaps the old house settling, or the wind nudging the eaves. But the noise grew clearer. Someone was moving. Someone who should have been asleep. The doorknob turned. I froze, heart hammering as the door eased open with deliberate slowness. A sliver of light from the hallway cut across the floorboards before a figure slipped inside, closing the door gently behind them. "Are you awake?" The whisper floated across the room, intimate and sharp in the silence. I recognized the voice instantly. My cousin. Of all the people who could have entered, she was the last I expected. She hovered near the door, her frame outlined faintly by the muted light from the hall. There was something about the way she stood, half uncertain, half defiant, that stirred unease within me. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly, as if that justified her intrusion. I didn't want to be alone. I pushed myself upright, confusion warring with irritation. "You chose my room." My voice was low, almost cautious, afraid of waking the others scattered across the house. She nodded, stepping further inside. "You don't mind, do you?" The question wasn't really a question. She crossed the space between us before I could answer, perching on the edge of the bed as though the decision had already been made. The mattress dipped beneath her weight, and the proximity unsettled me in ways I refused to acknowledge. I forced a casual tone. "What's keeping you awake?" Her gaze dropped to her hands, twisting together nervously. "I don't know. Maybe the house. Maybe everything." She let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Do you ever feel like your head won't stop running, even when the world goes still?" I understood more than I wanted to admit. There had been countless nights when my own thoughts kept me prisoner long past midnight. Yet the sight of her here, in my room, at this hour, carried implications that unsettled me deeply. She shifted closer, enough that her shoulder brushed mine. "You always listen better than the others," she murmured. "That's why I came." My instincts screamed to push her away, to restore the natural boundary that had just been crossed. But I stayed motionless, caught between propriety and curiosity. There was a fragility in her tone, a quiet plea wrapped in bravado, that disarmed me. The room seemed to shrink around us. The clock ticked louder, the fan spun slower, and every inch of air grew heavier with unspoken meaning. "Do you ever think about how strange it is?" she whispered suddenly. "What is?" "That we're here. That we're family, but not close, but distant. Like lines that shouldn't intersect, yet somehow they do." Her words carried danger disguised as honesty. I swallowed hard, unable to craft a reply that would untangle the web she was spinning. She leaned back slightly, studying my face with unreadable eyes. "Maybe I shouldn't have come," she said after a pause, though her body language betrayed no intention of leaving. For a moment, I imagined telling her to go, that this conversation was inappropriate, that the boundary she skirted was one we had no right to cross. But the words withered in my throat. The truth was more complicated. She had awakened something in me, a recognition of how easily temptation could step into a room uninvited, how swiftly silence could turn into danger. The night thickened around us. She remained seated, expectant, as if daring me to dismiss her or daring me not to. And though nothing irreversible had happened yet, I understood one thing with sharp clarity: the balance of my world had shifted. From this moment forward, nothing would feel the same. Checkmark. This section introduces the main characters, narrator plus cousin. The central conflict, her unexpected presence at 2 a.m., boundary crossing, temptation. The tone, suspenseful, intimate, morally charged. ends with a satisfying close shift in balance, foreshadowing of escalation, while inviting readers into the next section. She stayed beside me, her presence like a weight pressing against the air itself. I tried to steady my breathing, but every second stretched longer than it should have. The clock on the dresser marked the silence, each tick puncturing the room like a pinprick. "You don't have to sit here," I finally said, my voice softer than I intended. "I know," she replied. "But I want to." The simplicity of her answer disarmed me. I turned toward her, half expecting to see mischief in her expression, but there was none. Instead, her eyes looked tired, almost haunted. The shadows under them made her seem older than she was, though the faint curve of her lips betrayed youth. "I can't stop thinking," she confessed. "It's like my mind is on fire, and the only way to put it out is to talk to someone who understands." "Understands what?" I asked cautiously. "Being stuck, feeling invisible, pretending to smile when you don't feel it." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the pain beneath her words. I hesitated. There was truth in what she said, and I had no reason to doubt her sincerity. Yet part of me wondered if honesty was the only reason she was here. "Did something happen tonight?" I pressed. Her shoulders stiffened before she answered. "Another fight. With him." She nodded, her eyes flicking away. "He doesn't listen. He doesn't see me. I could disappear, and he'd notice only when it inconvenienced him." She gave a bitter laugh. "Do you know how lonely it feels to lie next to someone and feel like you're miles apart?" Her words hung heavy in the air, pulling me toward a dangerous sympathy. I wanted to comfort her, to ease the sharpness in her tone, but I knew where that road might lead. Still, I couldn't stop myself from saying quietly, "I'm sorry." She turned toward me, her face inches from mine. "You always say that like you mean it." Because I did, more than I wanted to admit. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it pulsed with unsaid things, the kind of silence that pushes two people closer instead of further apart. She shifted on the bed, her knee brushing mine. It was a small touch, accidental perhaps, but it set my pulse racing. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. "Then why are you?" "Because I needed to remember what it feels like to be seen." Her words struck harder than any touch. She wasn't looking for a room to sleep in, she was searching for validation, for intimacy, for something she had been starved of. And she had chosen me to fill that void. I leaned back slightly, trying to create distance, but she closed it again effortlessly. "You've always been different," she murmured. "Not like the others. You listen. You care. You make me feel." She trailed off, biting her lip. "Feel what?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. "Alive." The word lodged itself in my chest, dangerous and intoxicating. My conscience screamed at me, urging me to set boundaries, to tell her she was wrong, that we both were. Yet I couldn't form the words. I sat there, breathing shallow, caught between what I should do and what I wanted to do. Her hand found mine then, light as a whisper, tentative yet deliberate. I could have pulled away. I should have, but I didn't. Her eyes searched my face. "Do you ever think about us?" The question sliced through the last defenses I had left. I wanted to lie, to say no, to dismiss the thought as absurd. But my silence betrayed me, and she knew it. For a long moment, we stayed like that, two people suspended in the gravity of temptation, knowing the danger yet unwilling to step back. Finally, she drew in a shaky breath. "I know this is wrong," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But right now, it feels like the only thing that's real." Her honesty both terrified and tempted me. My instincts told me to end it, to push her away before the line was crossed. But the human part of me, the flawed, selfish part, was already leaning closer to the fire. And though nothing final had happened yet, the ground beneath us had already shifted. We were no longer safe. Checkmark section 2 expands the intimacy and emotional stakes. We see backstory, her troubled relationship. The emotional connection deepens, shared loneliness, sympathy. The first boundary crossing act, hand-holding, closeness, ends with a dangerous cliffhanger. They haven't acted fully, but the point of no return is drawing near. The stillness of the night grew unbearable. Every sound, the hum of the fan, the groan of the wood beneath us, seemed amplified, as if the universe itself were holding its breath, waiting for what might happen next. She hadn't let go of my hand. Her fingers traced idle patterns across my skin, hesitant yet deliberate, each movement speaking louder than words. I stared at our joined hands, torn between the urge to pull away and the temptation to let it linger. "You're too quiet," she whispered. "What do you want me to say?" My voice cracked under the weight of the moment. "The truth." Her eyes searched mine, glowing faintly in the dim light, desperate for something I couldn't bring myself to voice. I wanted to deny everything, to set her free from the thought she had planted between us. But honesty clawed at me, raw and dangerous. "Yes," I admitted finally, the word barely audible. "I've thought about it." Quote. Her breath caught, and a tremor ran through her frame. "So I'm not crazy." "No," I said, though every instinct screamed that we were both walking into madness. For a long beat, neither of us moved. Then she leaned forward, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. My pulse hammered in my throat, my thoughts a storm of guilt and desire. "We can't," I muttered, though my body betrayed me by not retreating. "I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I can't stop wanting to." Her honesty cracked something open inside me. All the rules, the unspoken boundaries of family, morality, decency, suddenly they felt like paper walls, fragile and breakable. I could almost hear them tearing as she drew closer. Her forehead brushed mine, a touch so light it should have been meaningless. Instead, it shattered the last remnants of restraint. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the inevitable. When her lips finally met mine, the world collapsed into silence. It wasn't loud or fiery. It was quiet, almost reverent, like two conspirators sealing a pact they knew they could never confess. The kiss was fleeting, but it carried the weight of every forbidden thought we had buried for years. I pulled back first, breathless. "This is wrong." "I know," she repeated, though her hands refused to release me. "But doesn't it feel real?" "Real." The word echoed in my head, carving through my conscience. It did feel real, painfully, dangerously real. That was what terrified me most. We sat in silence, our hearts racing, the distance between us forever altered. The kiss had crossed the threshold. There was no way to step back into the safety of innocence now. "Tell me you regret it," she said suddenly, her voice sharp, almost demanding. I hesitated. "Do you?" She bit her lip, her silence louder than any confession. The answer was clear. A flood of guilt surged through me, battling with the warmth still lingering on my lips. I wanted to tell her it was a mistake, that we could pretend it never happened. But the truth was cruel. Part of me didn't want to erase it. Humans are complicated creatures. We crave connection even when it destroys us. We reach for fire even knowing it will burn. And in that moment, I understood just how fragile we really are. She leaned against me, resting her head on my shoulder as though nothing had happened. "Just for tonight," she whispered. "Can't we just forget the rules, forget everything else, and just be?" Her words sank into me, both soothing and damning. I should have pushed her away then, drawn a line and never let it blur again. Instead, I wrapped an arm around her, sealing the choice I had already made in silence. The night stretched on endlessly, heavy with the weight of what we had done and the knowledge of what it meant. The house remained still, the family slept peacefully beyond the walls, unaware of the storm raging in one room. And though dawn had not yet broken, I knew there would be no undoing the darkness we had stepped into. Checkmark section 3 highlights. The confession is made aloud. Yes, I've thought about it. The line is crossed. First kiss, emotional collapse. The narrator reflects on the human condition, weakness, craving, contradiction. Ends with the cousin asking to forget the rules, just for tonight, locking them into the point of no return. When I opened my eyes, the light was already pressing through the curtains, pale and unforgiving. For a moment I lay there, disoriented, caught between the haze of sleep and the clarity of memory. The space beside me was empty, the indentation on the mattress already fading, as though she had never been there at all. But she had. The ghost of her presence clung to the room, sharper than the sunlight. Every detail, the warmth of her hand, the tremor in her voice, the forbidden kiss, came rushing back with brutal clarity. I sat up slowly, my throat dry, my body heavy. The house had stirred awake without me noticing. Somewhere down the hall, voices drifted faintly, the clatter of dishes, the rise and fall of ordinary conversation. Life went on, unshaken, unaware. I dressed in silence, my movements deliberate, as though rushing might somehow betray me. Each step toward the door felt like a march to judgment. At the breakfast table, everything appeared normal. Plates stacked neatly, tea steaming in porcelain cups, laughter rising from the corner where uncles debated politics. My cousin sat across from me, hair tied back, face composed into a mask of calm. She didn't glance in my direction, not once. Her performance was flawless. But I knew. I could see the faint shadow of exhaustion beneath her eyes, the stiffness in her posture, the way her hands toyed nervously with the edge of her sleeve. She was carrying the same weight I was, though she disguised it better. I lowered my gaze, focusing on the cup between my palms. Every word, every sound around me blurred into meaningless noise. How could everything feel so unchanged when the ground beneath me had shifted so violently? I replayed the night in fragments, the whispered confessions, the trembling honesty, the moment her forehead brushed mine. The kiss. Each memory was a blade, cutting deeper with every recall. Guilt gnawed at me relentlessly. This was more than a secret. It was a betrayal, of trust, of family, of the boundaries that give our lives structure. And yet, beneath the guilt, something darker lingered, a pull, a desire to experience it again, to taste the same fire even knowing how it burned. That contradiction terrified me. Humans are never simply one thing. We're torn creatures, capable of love and betrayal, tenderness and cruelty, restraint and indulgence, often within the same breath. "Are you all right?" someone asked. I looked up to find an aunt watching me curiously. I forced a smile, brittle at the edges. "Didn't sleep well," I said, and the excuse satisfied her. She turned back to her tea, and the world spun on. Across the table, my cousin finally raised her eyes. Our gazes met for a fraction of a second, long enough to confirm what words could not. The silence between us had become a bond, fragile and dangerous. The meal passed in a blur. As the family scattered to their routines, I lingered, caught between the impulse to confront her and the fear of what might be said if I did. In the end, I said nothing. She disappeared into another room, leaving only the echo of her presence behind. Later, alone in the quiet of my own space, I let the weight of it settle fully. We had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. No one would ever know, at least, not unless one of us chose to speak, but secrecy didn't erase consequence. It only buried it deeper. I thought about what it meant to be human. We pride ourselves on reason, on morality, on our ability to rise above instinct. Yet, when confronted with loneliness, desire, or the need to be seen, we crumble as easily as any fragile creature. That was the truth of us, not our perfection, but our weakness. And yet, perhaps there was strength in that too. To stumble, to fall, and still bear the weight of the fall, still wake up, still carry the guilt, still move forward. The memory of her touch lingered, impossible to banish. The shame would remain just as stubborn. Both were now part of me, inseparable, like two sides of the same coin. We are not strong because we never fall. We are strong because we live with what we've done. And as the day stretched on, I knew this truth would follow me forever. Checkmark section 4 completes the arc. The morning after, emptiness, normalcy in contrast to turmoil. Guilt and secrecy dominate. The cousin's silence becomes an unspoken pact. Ends with an HFY reflection. Humans are flawed, but our strength is in carrying our flaws, not avoiding them.